to make this workshop as interactive as possible so you guys can benefit completely as much as you can from this discussion that we have. So what my suggestion is, after each section that we complete, I will take your questions and then we'll move to the next section. All right. So let's get started. It's going to be rather long, this workshop. So feel free. It's going to probably take an hour and a half to 2 hours to complete this workshop. Although we had initially assumed it to be 1 hour, but looking at the content that we have to cover, it's going to take at least 1.5 hours through this process. And again, it all depends on the questions that we have to entertain through the process. Okay, shall we start this? For the people who are Collegepond students at this point in time, my suggestion would be that you've probably seen most of this earlier. So if you want to log off, you're more than welcome to log off. The people who are non-Collegepond students, I think this is probably the best workshop that we've had. That we have throughout the year. All right, so let's get started. All right, so let's begin by talking about the application workshop. What I want to give you some motivation when we start about the application process workshop, okay? You see these schools that people have got into, okay? It's not because everyone is super brilliant or students have a spectacular profile, okay? It's, I would say approximately 60% or 70% of the students who get into these schools, it's because of the application they put together and sent to the school, okay? So an application is nothing more than a marketing document for yourself, right? It's just to give you a simple example. A girl got into Stanford University, right, with a 8.8 out of 10 and a 323 and 323 on her GRE scores, and she applied for mechanical engineering. A guy who got into Berkeley or Georgia Tech or CMU for the matter, okay, Carnegie Mellon, got in with a 57% into the MIS program, right? So what I'm trying to say is it's not dependent only on your grades. Your application accounts for at least 50% of the entirety when they evaluate your profile. So they actually look at you from a holistic perspective. All right, also keep in mind, why is the application so important this year is that many schools have waivers. So what is going to happen is a lot more students are going to gravitate towards applying, which will actually raise the bar of what they're going to be looking at. So you cannot assume any longer that if you are in the top 15 or top 20% of your class and you're going to get into a specific school, when 2 years ago students actually got into the school. So what has effectively happened is all the analysis and all the models that they have out there on predictors on what school students get into are going to be null and void this year, because this year and last year, and you can see, you'll see based on the results, is because ultimately the competition has increased competition at least increased 2 to 3-fold because of the GRE waiver. All right. I'll give you a simple example related to the undergraduate system, because they publish a lot more statistics. Because they had an SAT waiver last year, Harvard saw a 40% increase in the application pool. All right. People had the grades and became a lot more difficult. Every school had excessive selectivity, or they went to a level of selectivity that was unseen before. So that gives you some kind of motivation that your application is absolutely, absolutely important when you actually look at applying to schools. All right. All right. What is the application process? All right. The simple process is very simple, the way I look at it. The first thing that when you look at applications, you need to look at what are your career goals. What are you trying to achieve with respect to your goals? Okay, what do you want to get out of the master's degree? In many cases, when we speak to students, what they want to achieve is that, hey, I want to migrate into that country, I want to get a job, and I want to have a good life going forward. That's perfectly fine. If another person says, look, I want to do a PhD, that's perfectly fine. We need to be very clear about our objective. Once we define an objective, then we work backwards and see what schools will actually get you to where you want to be. All right. If you're looking at jobs, we need to look at the return on investment. We need to look at the career placement statistics. All this information is available. Okay. And what we've done is we've actually profiled all this information on our app, which is readily available to download. And the app is called Converge. So that you guys can download the app, take a look at all the information. It's all available for you. Okay. We've also had student experience videos there. All right. And the student experience videos is actually the perfect place to understand what is the career placement statistics out of that school. People will talk frankly, because there was no university official there talking about whether it's a 50% of the students getting an internship or 80% or 90% getting internship. or maybe 100% getting full-time jobs. You'll have first-hand information of what students are getting into, right? Once you figure out the schools and universities, then you need to start working on the so-called the documentation part of your application, which is your statement of purpose, your letter of recommendation, and your resume, right? Now, with respect to the statement of purpose and letter of recommendation and resume, there's two different aspects you need to think about. The statement of purpose is essentially your document, your story to the school. The letter of recommendation is a third party's perspective of your qualities, whether you will achieve, whether you will succeed in the program, or whether you fit in the program. All right. A resume is a 30. What they're going to do is they're not going to spend more than 20 to 30 seconds looking at your resume, but that'll give you a brief profile, a very quick first-hand view of who you are as an individual. So each of these three components have a different purpose in the evaluation process, right? Once you guys apply there, you fill out your application form, you get your admits, right? As you're looking at admits, start looking at scholarships, right? We can help you through the scholarships, but there are a lot of scholarships available for you. And then the whole I-20 and financial planning starts. The visa process, the pre-departure. When you're making applications, there are many schools that don't have application fees today, okay? Connect with us and you'll see, we'll be able to help you through the process on that as well, right? So let's continue. So the first thing and the most important thing I want to discuss is a statement of purpose. I think this is your story to the school, all right? So what is a statement of purpose supposed to be? It's exactly your motivation. There are 5 questions that you need to address in the statement of purpose, all right? The first question you need to address is, who are you as an individual? Okay, why are you interested in the program? What's your motivation behind the program? The second question is, what are your career goals? The third question is, what have you done to substantiate your career goals? The fourth question you did, how will the school help you achieve your career goals? And the last one is, what will you give back to the school? We will talk about all this as we go through the building blocks of the SOP in the forthcoming slides. Okay. SOP by far is the deciding factor. In fact, I've had students who've written phenomenal SOPs have got into schools that they would have unheard of. They thought it was impossible to get into. All right. There are students who've got into 10 out of 10 schools, and it's not because of the CGPA or GRE. The many students had the same CGPA or GRE. What was different was the SAT. It was the SOP. All right. It was a package that they put together. All right. So as I discussed, as I indicated to you, an SOP is your qualitative story to the school. It's not quantitative. The quantitative measure has been your GRE score and your CADs, okay, which we can't change. So the only thing you can really highlight and play around with is your qualitative story. And that's what we work diligently with our students. And we have a long process. We have a 3-week process that we work with each student to actually make sure the story comes out well, okay? And it's actually a 3-step process as well, all right? What are we trying to focus on the SOP? Your goals, your achievements, your motivations, your strengths, okay? All that put together in a 1,200-word document is what we're looking at. So what are the building blocks of the SOP? As I discussed, I talked about the questions that you need to answer, but we also need to address the building blocks of the SOP, okay? We have an introduction that has to be catchy, okay? If it's not catchy, and this is where you need to spend a lot of time, and this is where students actually have the most difficult time through the process. Even as counselors, we spend so much time on the introduction because that is the hook to get the student, to get the university official or the administration to actually start to read your SOP and want to be interested in reading further. Okay, the schools, the evaluation committee has 200, 400, 600, maybe 1,000 SOPs to look after. There are 10 people probably evaluating this thing. Each one has 100 SOPs to look at. How does one differentiate one from the other? It's a hook. It's the introduction. And that's why the introduction is so important. The second thing is your academics, okay? Your projects and papers. We're not looking at a regurgitation of your resume. One of the problems that people have is either they make a personal statement out of your SOP, which is a statement of purpose, where they write the whole life story and give a chronological process of what each one has actually done, or what an individual has done through why he was interested, why he went to 10th, why did he do what he did in 12th, and then he went to college, and then he went to engineering, and now he wants to do a master's, right? Or someone just repeats the resume in a more expanded form. That's not what an SOP is. SOP is supposed to be a story, and that's what you need to forget. That's what you need to focus on, all right? the next question, the next thing let's go to the paragraph, next question, okay? There are 4 different ways or 5 different ways to actually write your introduction. Okay, so we are going to go through the 5 steps. The reason I'm spending so much time on the introduction is because the introduction is your hook to your SOP. All right. So one way to begin your SOP is actually focus on a global issue or ecological concern or a theme that is important. Okay. Such beginnings actually focus on curiosity and it's a good start to the whole SOP. So let's talk about one of them that will give an example of what it was. Here's a draft of a student at Stanford who actually started talking about energy sector. Okay, take a look at reading this. All right, I'll give you another 10 seconds to read this, and then we'll start discussing it. Rahul, are you there? Farhan, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Can you put the poll up?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What I want you guys to do and answer the question, okay, how many people think this was a good introduction? Have you put the poll up?
Yes, sir, I'm doing that.
It reads well, it answers the question, but is this, the question you need to ask is, if I'm looking at it, is this a students, is this something what Stanford is looking at? Is this what the admission committee is looking at? How many people think this is a good introduction? Rahul, can I see the results? Farhan, can I see the results?
Yes, sir, just give me a moment.
All right. If you have any questions, rather than raising your hand, just put in the Q&A box. All right. Till he goes to the thing, let's go further with this. Okay. I haven't seen the results, so I won't be able to comment. Farhan, is the results out?
Yes, sir. Just a moment. I am showing it to you.
I'm not sure if the poll is up yet. I am just waiting for the poll as well. Okay. So please put your question up as you go through this process. Okay. I'm just waiting for the poll to go up. Okay. The poll is up. Great. The poll is there. So please answer your question. Please answer the question. How many people like this introduction? Guys, instead of raising your hand, I think it's better to just put in the Q&A, the question. How can I see the poll? Farhan, how can they see the poll?
Just a moment, sir. Now they can see.
Okay, you should be able to see the poll at this point in time.
Right.
Okay, Farhan, guys, can you see the poll at this point in time? So I can move on? Yes,
sir.
Perfect. Farhan, I think you guys all must have answered the question on the poll.
Right. So so they are still doing. Just give me a moment. I think, yeah. So 70% of audience said yes, and 30% said no.
So how many people like this? How many people like this? So the question was, do you like this introduction? And 70% of you guys said yes. Okay. Let's go and see what we did with this introduction. Okay. It has all the pieces. It's there. It's everything is there. It makes sense. Okay. But let's talk about what we did and how we changed this introduction. Okay. But before we go through this, let me just talk about how I would have changed this introduction. Energy is required for every activity from transportation to manufacturing or for lighting up a city at night. Okay. The first sentence, okay, is that common knowledge? The answer is completely yes. Okay. This is something that's common knowledge. Every university official knows about this. What are you adding about yourself when you're writing the introduction? All right. So that's something that you need to think from an admission committee point of view. Are they learning something new about you? Or are you just telling them something that's already there in existence? So let's talk about how this student actually changed it. Okay. The student changed the introduction. We helped him change the introduction. This is how we went ahead and did it. We realized that the student okay, is a guitarist. So we actually related the entire story, okay, to what he's seen and what he's experienced. This version got him into Stanford. In fact, when he got this, when he actually received his admit, okay, the professor there actually wrote to him personally saying, "I loved your SOP, and that's why I picked you for the PhD program," and funded him completely for it. All right, he didn't have the credentials. He was just like every average individual, but the SOP sold it. The whole story sold it for him, and they could relate to it. All right, so let me see if there are any questions. Let's move on. All right. So you can see the difference between the basic generic introduction that you guys all liked versus what you can transform your introduction to be. All right. Let's continue. All right. There you go. His testimony about the SOP experience with Collegepond is right here. So for you guys to read it. Okay, I'm not going to spend so much time, but I'll just give you an idea. Okay. Okay, different ways of writing the introduction. Let's take another way of writing an introduction is pledging alliance to a humanitarian cause or talking about noble cause, because people like about the whole idea of community service or a social cause, etc. All right. For guys who are raising the questions and the participants who are raising the hand, it's better instead of raising your hand, just put the question in the Q&A and I'll answer it for you guys. All right. So social cause. All right. So this is an example of a student's final year draft that deals with the social cause. So if you want to start your SOP with a social cause, I'll give you an example of how you could potentially put a convincing story, an interesting story. So the admission committee is genuinely interested and want to read further into this thing. All right. I'm just going to be about 10 seconds, and then I'll move on. All right. The next type of introduction is talking about a breakthrough. Now, many times, you know what happens? You talk about yourself. I don't have a personal anecdote. I don't have a social cause to talk about. The easiest way to do is talk about a recent breakthrough in the field. I mean, you know what you're interested in doing. So go and research something about the field. Okay. Research something that actually makes sense. Research something that's talking about the future of the field. So we'll just talk about how this actually, how this pans out in an introduction. So here you go. Let me give you an example of this. I'll give you another 10 seconds, and then I'll move on. Let's go to the next question. Okay, another way to write a SOP is a personal anecdote, a story about yourself, and we'll talk about that as well. Like the way he did it in the Stanford one. Okay, he talked about ecological concern, okay, which was related to energy, but he also fitted in the personal anecdote. So that was mixing two different ideas, two different themes. Here's just a personal anecdote. So here you go. Now keep in mind, Google Voice Search, Google Maps is basic stuff, but see how he's intertwined it to a story that makes sense, that shows how he put it together and how he actually how he actually synthesized all the information to make a convincing case that he wants to do AI and ML. Okay, the slides are going to be this will be uploaded on our Yahoo page, on our YouTube page, so you can definitely access the presentation or the recording of this workshop at a later time as well. Can you show the building blocks of the SOP slide for a second? Vedant, what I will do is this is going to be available as on YouTube. You can always take a look at it at your leisure. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so I've given you right now 4 different flavors of what you can start your SOP in. Okay, what I want to stress out is the introduction by far is the most important thing in your statement of purpose. It has to be catchy, it has to be engaging, it has to be the right hook, and has to relate to your story. If it doesn't, it's going to be very difficult to get into the school that you want to. Okay, let's talk about an academic paragraph. Okay, the academic paragraph is a relatively easy paragraph to write. But what students generally do when they write academic paragraph, they just create a laundry list of every course that they've taken in the application in the undergraduate curriculum. We're not interested in that. They already have your transcript. All right. So if they have your transcript, why would you go ahead and talk about I did this program, I did this course, I did this course? What they're more interested in seeing is how did each of these courses, what did you learn from these courses, and how did each of these courses relate to your career goals? And how will it help you in graduate school? So they're more interested in learning from the courses that you've taken and drawing conclusion from the courses you've taken, as opposed to just listing the courses that you've taken. So let's talk about a simple example. So that's what you need to start focusing on. Okay. When it comes to projects and papers, all right, again, students spend too much time in detailing the projects and papers. Okay. They write 300, 400 words. If I give you a basic snapshot, your academic paragraph should not be more than 150 words in total. Okay. Projects and papers can be 300 words, but it has to be, if it's 300 words, it should discuss multiple projects. It should not discuss only one project. Again, the university committees are interested not to learn about what each step of the process of how you achieved what you did in the project, because that's already written, could be written in your letter of recommendation, could be written in your resume. What they're interested in is finding out what was the objective of the project, what are the skills that you had applied, okay, and you used, leveraged, what are the obstacles and what are the challenges you faced, and what was your learnings out of it, okay? And also discuss any accolades or recognitions that you may have, all right? So the whole focus is that they want to be more interested about what you got out of the project as opposed to what you did in the project, all right? So when you look at projects and papers, focus on what you've actually learned more than what you did. Data is available in your resume, and they have a clear understanding by just looking at the title of the project. They'll know very clearly what you did in the project because they're coming from a similar field. All right. Let me answer some questions and then move on. All right. Is it okay to talk about an illness in the family in the introduction? Ria, it's completely okay. I've had students who talk about a grandfather's case where he had cancer, etc. That's perfectly fine. Okay. As long as it strikes a chord and you relate it to what you want to do, it works perfectly. Okay. Is there a benefit of applying super early for the MS program, applying about a week before the deadline? Is it okay? I will answer this question, but let's focus the question directly on what we are actually discussing in the topics. And then we'll take the general questions later in the presentation. Okay, when I open the floor to everything. All right. Is there a benefit of applying super early? It depends. It depends on whether depends on the program as such. Some programs have a priority deadline. Some programs, some schools actually look at your application only after the deadline. Okay, so there's no one right answer. It depends on university to university. Speak to the university counselor; they'll help you with that. Okay, Neil. I'm going to answer your question later. Okay, the question is it okay to mention failure in some competitive exam and how you overcame that? Then finally, Dimple, I would never do that. I would never start with the weakness and then move to a strength. It's your story. It's your marketing document. Why do you want to bring a weakness into the picture? Okay. I would rather talk when someone reads it. Why do you want to create a doubt in their mind when they read about you? Rather, go from strength to strength. All right. Let me go to the chats and see whether there's anything. Okay. Is it fine? There was a question that was asked. Okay. Guys, can I make a suggestion? Just put it on the Q&A. It becomes very difficult to go back and forth. All right. How important are internships in this process? Internships, if you have work experience or internship, It's the best thing to highlight it in the beginning of your thing. Maybe you should start with introduction with an internship or a work X. Why is it important? Is because generally the way students, the way the university officials read it, they read the first 3 paragraphs carefully and then they'll skim through the rest. So whatever you want to highlight in the first 3 paragraphs. All right. Internships, work experience are more important than academic projects. So that's the way you look at it. Okay. If you got a bad grade in a subject relative to the specialization, if you got a bad grade, Tejas, it's better to actually go ahead and don't talk about the bad grade. Just talk about the fact that you did the course. Let them spend the time looking at your transcript. They might not even look at the transcript for that matter. Okay. We've had students who've not had perfect grades in the specialization they want to do, but they still get into good schools because you're making, why do you want to highlight anything? Leave it, just keep it low. And if they catch it, they catch it, but generally they won't. Right? Because they will not go through a transcript with a fine tooth comb. Okay. Is it fine to mention personal health issues? It's perfectly fine to mention personal health issues, but keep in mind, it should not be a sympathy story. Okay. You don't want pity from them. Right. So just keep that in mind as well. If you're okay, Samaksh, okay. Just a last question. He said, is it if I feel my application won't be completely optimal till the priority deadline, should I apply the second deadline? Guys, do not rush this application. Okay. You need to apply when everything is perfect to the best of your ability. So let's continue with this and then we'll move on. Okay. Paper publications, likewise like projects. And when we discussed projects and projects earlier, right? A paper publication, we need to talk about, don't spend time about every single thing. We don't want a summary of your paper publication. Your paper publication should not be, you should spend no more than 2 lines describing each paper if you have multiple paper publications. Okay. Keep in mind that the journal, if it's a good journal, please mention the journal you're getting into. Okay. Because for example, IEEE and something else related to at that type of caliber type of journal, mention those. Okay. Even if the journal is not so well known, go ahead and mention it. All right. Make sure you write the citation of the paper, because if they want to look at it, they can easily access the citation at a later point in time. All right. Internships and work experience. Like projects, what are we looking at when we describe internship and work experience? When we look at internship and work experience, what we're looking at is your role and responsibility. Okay. Your skills that you leverage, what you did there, and most importantly, what did you learn? Okay. I'll keep on talking about the fact is what you learn through the entire process. And the reason I keep on saying that is because the entire SOP should be focused more about what you learn versus what you did, because what you did is already available in your resume. So focus on your learnings and how that learnings will actually relate to your career goals and what you want to achieve and your master's program. Okay. While majority of your SOP will focus on your work experience, your projects, your internships, okay, your career goals, there's a paragraph that we write about extracurricular activities. Okay. Why we write about extracurricular activities is because we want to show you as a holistic individual. We do not want to just talk to you about you're a geek out there. You've done academically well, you've done projects really well, you've done a lot of projects, but we want to say there's a different side of you that we want to bring into the picture. Okay. You might have empathy, you might be very good in sports. You might have done a lot of community service activities. You can show your leadership skills, your teamwork, your team player skills. All that comes into perspective when you actually talk about the extracurricular activities. Okay. Again, here, it's not talking about a list of what you did. Okay. When you write your extracurricular paragraph, you're focusing more on how did that impact your impact on what you did, from what you did. So for example, if you actually helped a community, if you actually went ahead and worked in a NGO, okay, what was the impact of your efforts in an NGO? We want to talk about that. We don't want to talk about the fact that you did something at the NGO, but we want to talk about what you did, what was a result of what you did at the NGO. So that's what's going to be more interesting to read than what you did. Okay. One of the things that students generally tend to forget and tend to spend very little time is a university specific paragraph. Okay. Why? They think it's very simple to write it. Just talk about the curriculum, put a few courses in, etc., and that's the end of it. Okay. This is a paragraph that's the university officials or the so-called the admission committee pays somewhat of a closer look to see whether you actually spend some time understanding the program. Okay. If you haven't spent time understanding the program, okay, why should they admit you? Okay. So when you look at a program, when you look at the course that you're planning to get into, definitely look at the research opportunities that are, talk about the labs that are there, how you fit into the program. Okay. What is the USP? What is the motto of the program? Okay. So you need to start figuring out what the ethos of the program is. You need to figure out what the entire program is all about and why you as an individual, based on your qualities or based on what you mentioned in the past, mentioned the earlier paragraphs, in the former paragraphs, how you fit into the program. All right. So that's what the university specific paragraph is all about. The last field is conclusion. Okay. When I look at conclusion, okay, one of the questions that I asked, one of the questions I mentioned to you earlier is, what will you give back to the university? Okay. A conclusion is a perfect place for you to mention why it's a right fit for you, but most importantly, how will you contribute to that university? If you're unable to elaborate on that, why should they pick you? So one of the things you can say, you can become a brand ambassador for school. You will actually help in the student council there or the student community activities. Talk about what is there outside of the school. Okay. And how do you find that information out? The way you find that information, watch the student experience videos on Converge, okay, which is readily available to you. Secondly, speak to people who are already there at the college. Okay, see what they say. What is the USP? What are you doing there? Speak to your seniors. What are they doing there at this university? And then talk about those things. The reason why it's important is because then they know, this university officials know that you've spent the extra time and the effort to learn about that particular program. Okay, important things to remember when you actually write this SOP. Okay, we are not interested in using superlatives. Superlatives saying that I'm the greatest, I'm the best. Okay, we do not want to have paragraphs that just go very creative and descriptive. Okay, we're not interested in descriptive stuff. Okay, we need to be to the point. It's 1,200 words. You need to address all the questions that I mentioned earlier and all the paragraph, the building blocks, as you mentioned earlier, and start moving it. Okay, do not focus on praising yourself in this document. Okay, saying I'm talented, I'm intelligent, I'm the best. Okay, don't be overly too technical, because if you're too technical and you write something that's incorrect, it's immediate rejection. So make sure your SOP is completely technically correct. All right. You need to make sure you use action verbs. You do not want to have any grammatical errors. You want to make sure that everything, the passive voice in your SOP should be very limited. Okay. So try using action verbs. Most importantly, the other thing is, don't use I everywhere in your SOP. Okay. I've seen students at numerous occasions where they're, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this. Try to vary your sentence structures. Okay. Going forward, things to avoid. Okay. Plagiarism. Okay. Please don't copy from any of the resources that you see. You can use them as a starting point, but make sure you do not copy. Okay. Don't overuse high funda GRE words. You write it the way you normally write, but make sure it is not colloquial, and make sure it is not very casual. It has to be formal writing. Okay. Do not make, you have to keep in mind, they have your AWA score. So if you write in a specific manner in your SOP, your AWA and your SOP is written in a different manner. When they compare the two, they'll be able to judge how well you actually write. All right. Granted, the AWA could be a one-day affair. Okay. But if there's your verbal scores and your AWA scores, make sure your SOP, your essay is not written by someone else who's used extremely flowery languages through this process. Okay. When you customize the SOP for every university, make sure you are diligent. Okay, with the name of courses, the professors, the labs, and make sure you change the name of the university. You know how many times have you had in every year we actually come across 5 to 6 students that say, sir, we made a mistake. We forgot to change the university name. And we submitted the SOPs. Okay, so please make sure you do that. Okay. Do not use the same sentences in your SOP and LORs, because you're going to be working on your LORs as well as the SOPs. Okay. In our case at Collegepond, we write the LORs for you because we want to make sure they're different than your SOPs. But make sure when you have both the documents, there is similar. Do not use. Make sure that there are no similar sentences or the same sentences in both the documents. Okay. And the best person to actually correct that is the individual, you guys yourself, because no one else will be able to do it. Okay, before we talk about LORs, let's talk about questions regarding SOP and then we move to LORs. Okay, so let me first start this. Okay, I feel my application won't be complete. Can we do first 3 again, please? Guys, I can't go back and look at the slides, prior slides, but the workshop will be available on YouTube, so you can definitely look at it again, watch it again. All right, so let's ask the questions and then we can move ahead. Right? Can we write codes? Niti, you can definitely write codes, okay? But make sure the code, when you're writing a code, make sure it relates to you or make sure it relates to the story that you're actually writing. Don't write codes in because it sounds good. Okay, I've seen many cases where students actually start with the code because it sounds really good. It sounds high fun up, but it has no relevance to what they're writing. All right. There was another question. Is there a benefit of applying super early for MS programs? Or we already discussed that. Okay, we already discussed the personal health issues. You can mention a personal health issue. Okay, if the job is not related to the major, should we add that? If the job is not related to the major, you don't need to add it. Okay, what you can do with respect to the job is put it later in the SOP. But don't relate it, don't ignore the job, but talk about the other learnings that you would have learned from the job. So for example, your time management skills, your leadership skills. Bring all those things, bring all those attributes out of that experience that you had. Okay. Is it too late to start the SOP after the 20th October for fall 22 admits? It's not late, but keep in mind, SOP takes time to create. Okay. So what I would do is I would actually spend time brainstorming and ideating your storyline, write the first draft, keep it away for a week, 10 days, and then go revisit it again. All right. Because that's the way I would actually approach it. The reason I would do that is because then you'll have second thoughts of, okay, hey, you know what? I've spent 10 days, I've stopped looking, I didn't look at it, but I look at the fresh look. I might say, hey, this is great or this is not good at all. So you have a time to actually go ahead and reevaluate your SOP. Okay. What should we highlight about internships or WorkX? As I discussed, what do you need to highlight about internships or WorkX is A. The 4 things you need to highlight is A, the company that you worked in, what capacity you worked in the company. 2, what did you do there in a 1 line or 2 lines? 3, and most importantly, what did you learn from that internship or WorkX? And 4th, how does that relate to your career goals? So Amisha, those are the 4 things you need to actually highlight. Right? How to write about a new interest you found recently related to your field. If you found a new interest to your thing, write it. Start with that interest in your introduction. Make it very engaging for the reader to read more about it. All right, that's what I would do. Okay, how to fill gaps of not having any internship or work experience? Is it mandatory to have one? Forum, it's not mandatory. Half the students don't have any internship or work. Okay, and they get into really good schools. Okay, so it doesn't mean that you need to have an internship or WorkX. Okay, if you have one, great. If you don't, not an issue at all. Niti is asking, internship or WorkX can be in the intro. Yes, it can be, Niti. And actually, if you have one, if you have an internship or work experience related to the program that you're applying to, it should definitely be in the intro. Okay. Does research intern as of 1 year count as work experience? Himanshu, it does count as work experience. Again, if it's related to what you want to do, definitely put it up in the SOP and start with that in the introduction, because it's going to captivate the reader. Hey, he's got experience of what he wants to apply to. It will definitely sell your story. It will be an easier sell. Okay. Pativra, I'm sorry, I'm mispronouncing your name. Okay. If we are an average student and have average extracurriculars, is in this case, how do we go about the SOP? Pavitra, I've had many students who've had average profiles. Okay. And they still get into good school. It's how you communicate your story. Okay. It's what you bring in, how you highlight when you have average profiles, it's how you put the story together. Okay. And quite honestly, just keep in mind, we're talking about this workshop. We talked about the building blocks. Okay. I can guarantee you, all right, the fact that you listen to the story and this workshop, and the fact that you're going to actually use everything that I'm talking about in your SOP, you'll come up with a much better draft than a typical Joe. Okay. So if you just follow the instructions that I'm laying it down today, it's going to help you. If you need help, we can definitely help you through our counseling process. Okay. Ria, does a freelance project count as work experience even if there are no formal contract with the client? Yes. People are not looking at actually what contract there is or anything. They just want to know what you learned from the experience. Okay. For the extracurricular of the courses taken, is it mandatory to have certification? No. Pavitra, there's no reason for it. No one is going to ask you for any certificates at all. Hello, I'm called Grace. I'm 16. Am I looking for scholarship? I don't know what you're talking about, Grace. Let's move on. What type of assistance would be required in the formation of SOP and LORs? Neil, what type of assistance? If you're talking about our counseling services, just contact Farhan. If you can just put this down as the link, and you can definitely ask someone to get in touch with you, Neil.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can we write the name of professor? Can we write the name of for whom we are going to learn? You can do that, but how effective is it? Professors, keep in mind there are millions of professors out there. Is the professor that you're going to mention, is he really someone that of authority? I can guarantee you 99.9% the professors that you guys will mention has no authority. Or he's not a significant luminary in the field or significantly person in the field. He might be great in your university, but he might be unknown in the world in that field. Okay. So if he's unknown, why does someone want to read about it? They are more interested in reading about the work that you did. Not to use the shortcuts like B projects, and what should you use an undergrad project? Just talk about undergrad. Don't use B projects. Working as part of my curriculum on undergraduate on projects. Okay. Don't use the word BE, but you can mention undergraduate. Okay, guys, one more thing. When we actually talk about graduation, here graduation in India means that you completed 4. We talk about the whole idea is graduation projects. In US parlance, okay, what you guys are doing is you guys are completing undergraduate projects. So don't talk about graduation projects. Make sure you mention undergraduate projects. All right, Vedant. So you just talk about the fact that I don't say B project, say my final year project or my undergraduate projects range from XYZ. How many words should Dimple? The SOP should be no more than 1300 to 1350 words. Do you provide SOP and LOR writing service? We do provide that. It is actually, again, the link, Farhan, if you can just share the link in the chat. Okay. Total 5 paragraphs in SOP, not necessarily true. Okay. I've had students who have 8 paragraphs. Okay. I've given you 5 paragraphs in terms of structure. Okay. But how the story flows could be 8, could be 4, could be 7 paragraphs. Okay. That's depending on each different SOP that we write. Okay. Is architectural final year thesis dissertation considered a publication even if it's not going anywhere? No, it's not considered a publication at all. You mentioned is a final year thesis. Okay. Is there some sort of limit? We already discussed that quickly. Is it okay if I point out our CV are repeated in the SOP, or should we avoid that? Please avoid repeating what's in your LOR or your resume in your SOP. They have those documents. Okay. Your resume will not talk about the learnings. Your SOP will talk about the learnings. Okay. So focus on that. Right. Some of the universities I'm applying to have a 500 to 600 word limit for the SOP. How to ensure all the information is there? Should I reduce some topics? Perfect question. Excellent question, Urvi. When you have 500 to 600 words that you write in your SOP, what's not important? Why didn't you spend time mentioning an academic paragraph? Okay. Why you rather focus on what you want them to hear? What is so unique about you? What have you brought to the table? What are the things that you've done to show that you actually have the foundation or the interest to pursue that program? So focus on all these things. The rest of the stuff, leave it. Extracurriculars are not needed in a 500, 600 word SOP. Focus on exactly what you have done. Okay, that is related to your program. That related to the program that you're applying to, and how it fits into your career goals. So talk about the things that substantiate your career goals and your interests. Okay. I complete my diploma from mechanical and then shifted from mechanical diploma to be in civil engineering. Should I explain the reason behind this transition? No. Why do I need to go in the past? Okay. You don't need to do all that. Okay. The SOP is talking about future. The reason it's talking about statement or purpose. It's talking about the future. It's a forward-looking statement. It's not a history of what you've done, what you've achieved. They're looking at how your experience to date will help you in the future. Vedant. I'm concerned if the SOP will force a reader to slumber. Well, then there's a problem. Okay. You need to make sure it is effective with someone that engages the reader through the entire process. Okay. For the extracurricular courses taken, is it mandatory to have certifications? No, there's no mandatory reason to have certificates as proof. Okay. How long should you spend ideally for SOP? Good question. I say SOP should roughly take about 3 weeks to write an SOP, a really good SOP. Okay. The reason I say 3 weeks is because you're going to write it. First, you're going to ideate a story, write the first draft, keep it for 2-3 days, go back to that draft, read it again, improve upon it, keep it, go back, do it 3-4 times. Okay. Our entire SOP process also focuses on helping you create a story. We don't have any templates. We don't use templates. We want to make sure that each story is actually suited to your specifications or your profile. Okay. And that's how we work through the documents. And that's why we get those in. That's the reason why we get the admits that we do. Okay. Can some technical terms be similar? Yes. Technical terms can be similar between SOP and LOR, okay? But there should be no sentences that are similar. Okay, guys, I want to move on. I'm just going to take the next 5 questions and then move on this, okay? If you're writing about social work we have done previously, extracurriculars will be asked to submit. There is no certificates that are required ever, okay? It's called the honor code, okay? Okay, if for a creative field like design, this is a good question. Like design, can you please throw some light on how one can correlate their portfolio with the SOP? Great question. Okay. Here, talk about the projects that you've done. Okay. And talk about how you approached it and what you learned out of the projects. All right. So when you look at it, the correlation between your portfolio and your SOP is you can relate. You maybe talk about you won't talk about, hey, I put this in your portfolio. But what you can say is I worked on this project, and then highlight the project in your portfolio as well. Okay. But talk about how you took that project, how you tackled that project. Okay. And what did you learn from the project? And then put the project in your portfolio as well. Okay. 2 more questions and I'm moving on. Okay. I've already given my SOP and score average. I've also sent scores to the university. University have now waived off GR. What should I do? Should I give the GRE again or mention in the application about my GRE? Akansha, if the school has waived your GRE and you mention the GRE, there's nothing you can do, but just hope, don't mention in the application form that you're submitting the GRE. Leave it. They will not refer it back to the details that you provided. Don't make any reference to that in your application form. Okay, guys, I'm going to move on. I know there are a lot of questions with respect to this. I just want to, and most of this, we'll try to answer this. You can definitely speak to one of our counselors and they'll be able to address some of the questions also for you. Okay, if we continue asking all these questions, we will never get past this page, this section itself. Okay, so I apologize, but let's move on, right? Okay, what is an LOR? As I go through this, okay, I'm just checking time. Okay, what is an LOR? An LOR is actually a document that corroborates your skills. Okay, a third party is writing this document and talking about you. What are they talking about? Okay, they're talking about in what capacity they know you. What have you done? What do they think of the things that you've done? Okay, and finally, okay, what do they believe how you'll fit into the program, or whether it makes sense for you to actually pursue that program. Okay, so let's talk about going through the LOR. So what is a good LOR? Okay, you're talking about academic and professional skills, your personal character, your intellectual abilities, blah blah blah. Okay, most important thing when you're looking at LOR, okay, is that anything that you write, if you're going to say that this guy is a great, this guy has, you can actually use, don't use superlative words, but you can market yourself as much as you want. Okay, you want them to endorse your competence as much as you want them as you can. Okay, but when you actually talk about your aptitude or your skill set, make sure you use examples. Okay, talking about skill set without actually corroborating it will not get you far. Okay, it sounds like an empty, hollow document. Always make sure that you have examples to support your cause. All right. So a simple example: if you say that this guy has been an exceptional student in class, why has he been an exceptional student in class? What has he done to sort of demonstrate that he's been an exceptional student in class? Please explain those questions. So whenever you make a statement, ask why, what, how when you answer the questions in your LOR. Okay, you're going to write 3 LORs. Okay, when you write 3 LORs, all right, you're going to talk about who are you going to take the LOR from. Okay, there's no right or wrong answer. Okay, they don't know any of these people. Okay, one of the questions that comes very often is, hey, my professor is not a PhD, he's only a master's, what should I do? Guess what? It doesn't matter. Don't mention the designation of the professor. Okay, if he's a lecturer, he's not a professor, he's not a PhD, what should I do? Don't mention it. Just the fact that he's been your instructor in your LOR in the first paragraph. We'll talk about the building blocks of the LOR as we move on through this presentation. Okay, how should you decide who you want to take it? You need to talk about who actually has taught you. More important than that is how you want to take the LOR from someone who's related to the field that you're planning to pursue. Okay, so if you have take 3 LORs and you've done an internship or work-ex, and it's related to the field that you're planning to go to, make sure that you take an LOR from one of the senior members of the team that you worked in. Okay, at the company. When it comes to school, when it comes to college, you can either take it from a professor, you can either take it from a principal, you can take HOD. It's your choice. But ultimately, make sure that he's there to submit the LOR. Okay, because what happens inevitably is many times you start writing the LOR for a specific professor, or we start working with an LOR for you guys for a specific LOR, and what do we find out? Okay. After you do the entire process, the professor is not going to sign off more than 3 or 4. So you ensure that that doesn't happen to you. Okay. So makes the first question, he should be approachable and willing to help you. Okay. Make sure that he's had some interaction with you. Okay. If you've done a lot of extracurriculars and you want to mention the extracurriculars, okay, take it from a principal or HOD. All right, because they are there and they can relate to various pieces. If you're taking from the principal, but he's not taught you, he can always say that prior to writing this, I went ahead and got I got input from the various teachers that has taught him. Okay, you can talk about that. Okay, if you have professors whose subject you've taught and is related to what you want to do, take it from him. Okay, there are 3 different parts of the LOR. You have the introduction. Okay, let me just push this down here. You have the introduction, you have the body, and you have a conclusion. The introduction clearly mentions what the relationship between you and the recommender is. Okay, what is his general summary of who you are, and what does he think of you in a 1-line statement? The body is going to reflect on what he mentioned in the introduction and build upon that. Okay, for each trait and quality he mentions, it needs to be substantiated with an example. Okay, make sure, because you're going to be writing 3 LORs, that the same sentences are not there in all 3 LORs. Make sure that each of the LORs sounds different. Okay, ensure that the LOR brings a different twist or angle to your profile. So what I would do when I look at LORs, I would write down all the skills that I want to mention, all the projects that I want to mention, and then identify and then see which LOR I'm going to focus on one aspect, which LOR I want to focus on second, which LOR I want to focus on third. I'm also going to think about, I can overlap the 2. That's fine. Okay, but that's available, that you can do, but don't make it both sound absolutely identical. In fact, in our place, when we look at LORs and we help you guys write LORs, we have 3 different individuals writing each of the LORs to ensure that they don't sound alike. Okay, include complete information like personal ID, etc. Okay, important tips for LOR. Okay, you can go ahead and read this. I can put the mailing address down. Okay, will the university contact the recommender? One of the questions is asked excessive number of times. They won't, unless things don't add up. Unless they believe that the LOR is fictitious, they will not call. Okay, you don't need to mention the LOR as we discussed. Make sure the SOP and LOR don't sound alike at all. Okay, file type and naming conventions. This is an important thing, but it's quite stupid, but it is very important because this is where students actually mess up. Okay, when you write an LOR for a student, when a professor writes it, when you write this, you write LOR and write the professor name. How many times does the professor actually write the professor name in the LOR in the naming convention of the document? He would rather write the student name in the file name. So make sure when you do this, finally, you write the student name. Also clean up the profile, clean up the background information about the LOR, so that there's no trace of which document, which computer this was written from. All right. Make sure the LORs look different. Okay. And most importantly, waive the right to view your LOR. Okay. Your answer has to be yes. If not, what does that mean? That you've actually seen the LORs before they've actually been submitted. Okay. Let's deal with some questions relating to LOR, and then we'll move on. All right. I'm just going to go back from back. Does the person's rank in the organization matter? No, it does not matter. Aryan. Okay. Can the recommender be a teacher who has taught us in junior college? I would not use a recommender from a junior college. You spend 3 to 4 years, and you must have a teacher there, the professor that can answer your question. Okay. For LOR, I'm from electronics, but for research work, I have worked for a professor of mechanical for electronics project from IIT. Should I take his LOR? Okay. Keep in mind, if it's not related to what you're doing, don't take it from him. if the LOR relates to your ultimate career goals that you mentioned in your SOP and what you want to pursue in your graduate degree, then take it from him. So everything has to be related. The whole idea is that when you write these documents, everything has to be related. Okay. What do you mean by waive the right of the LOR? One of the questions that's going to be asked as part when you complete the forms is do you waive your right to see the LOR? That means you've not seen the LOR. If you say no, that means you're actually taking a look at the LOR before it is submitted. Ishkesh. Okay. Should we mention same extracurricular activities in LOR and SOP? You will mention, there will be an overlap between the two. Okay. Between the SOP and LOR, but don't write in the same context. When you're mentioning in the activities in the LOR, you're talking about what you did in the activities. Okay. And what impact you've had. Okay. That's true with the SOP, but SOP, you don't need to describe what you did in the activities. LOR can talk about that and what did the recommender think about your effort in their activities. Or with respect to when the recommender thinks about, he can talk about what he believed was the significance of activity and what he thought about what you did in the activity and how well you did it. So you can mention those things. Okay, should my LORs be from professor related to my field? Yes, Divya. Can we take recommendations from a previous employer internship senior instead of current work? You can definitely take the recommendation from a previous employer instead of your current work. Okay, but also keep in mind the tenure of your relationship with that work is very important. Okay, by when should the LORs and SOPs be ready for fall 22? Ideally, it should be ready by the month of end of October, beginning November. There are few universities who send a link to the professor to fill in the recommendation. How do you deal with that? Perfect question. Great question. All the universities will send a link. Majority of the universities will send the link directly to the professor. All right. And that's why your relationship with the professor is absolutely important and extremely important. Okay. He should be there. He should be flexible enough for you to reachable for you to be able to reach to him and get the process rolling. Okay. Make sure that if you're going to use his email ID and fill in the forms, do it from his computer or a college computer. Is it beneficial to take an LOR from one BTech project guide? Yes, if it's directly related to what you're planning to do. Is there a study gap? If there's a study gap of 10 years, a professor, that's the college in this case, what to do? If there's a study gap of 10 years, then just focus on your work experience. Because obviously you've graduated, now you're working on your work. You have the work experience. Okay, you've been working for a while. All right. Generally speaking, if you have worked for more than 3 years, you don't need to worry about getting 2 LORs from the college because the professors might have changed. Okay, then focus only on work experience. Or people get the recommendation from your workplace. Okay, my professor says they want to write the LOR themselves, ask me to just send my resume and should I proceed? Yes, Rishikesh. They're willing to do it, be more, definitely let them do it. Okay, some schools, some universities like BITS, they actually write themselves. Okay, but make sure they're good writers and good auditors. Okay, I am from a technical background. I have done a technical internship. Can I take an LOR from a guide? Yes, you can take a thing. Okay, what if my only options are LORs from unrelated course professors? If your LORs are only from unrelated course professors, that's fine. But then talk about the skill set, the qualities, bring the qualities to the picture and substantiate your qualities. For example, you have strong analytical skills. You have the ability to think independently outside the box. Okay, you're a great team player. Mention those. And then relate it through experience of that. Okay, can I take an LOR from a previous boss and not my present boss? You can do that. Not an issue at all. Can we see any LOR examples? It's available on Collegepond, the portal. Definitely take a look at that. Samaksh. Okay, I just finished my 12th. Should I take my LORs from different principals or as my biology teacher? or my biology as well as I want to go for undergrad in biology. If you want to go for undergrad biology, okay, take it from a principal, take it from a counselor, take it from a teacher. Can LORs be taken from lab faculty who haven't taught the subjects? I wouldn't go with lab faculty who's not taught the subjects. To find someone else who's taught you something. Because how is he going to comment about you? Okay, I want to go for MIS, but my undergrad is at EXC. So my professor from you, what should I do then? Perfect. That's a great question. As I mentioned to you, talk about the qualities. What do people in MIS do? Okay, they go ahead, they need to have good leadership skills, okay, because you're going to be dealing with a lot of people. You need to have strong communication skills, okay. Bring those qualities into your LOR, okay. Bring those qualities and substantiate it with the EXCC projects. But don't highlight on what you did, but highlight on the qualities that you did and the teamwork that you worked on, all that stuff. Okay. Do I start making SOPs and LORs now or spend more time to give the GRE? Most of my under-targeted schools have weight GRE. At this point in time, what's going to get you into the school is your SOP and LOR. Definitely spend as much time as you can for your SOPs and LOR at this point in time. Would the counselor be helping us the way you've simplified the process in depth? Yes, the counselor will be helping us through the entire process. Should we submit the questions from the link that recommenders will get, or ask them to fill it only? You should always submit from the link that the colleges sends the recommenders. Okay. Okay, another 5 more questions, and I'm going to move into resumes. Okay. Is it okay if the professors wrote the last LOR 2 years ago? No. If you're going to reapply or you're going to apply later, make sure you actually get a new LOR altogether. Okay. My LOR left the university and joined under as soon as my batch passed. Can I still take the 3 LORs? Yes, you can. And he would need to mention that he needs to mention in his LOR that, look, I used to teach him, now I moved to the blah, blah, blah. And take it from his official ID. Ideally, when you take LORs, try to get it from the official ID. Okay, 3 more questions. Is it too late? I'm going to skip. Yes, no, it's not too late. You need to start working on it. Okay. After the documentation, I'm planning for a 6-month internship in a company. So how should mention that? That you can only mention your SOPs. You can't mention your resume or LORs because you haven't done it yet. Kunal. How many recommenders do we need? Neil, you need 3 recommenders. Okay, guys, I'm going to move on. This is going to go on and on. I'm just looking at the questions. Oh my gosh, it's just going to continue. Okay. So let's get on. Let's get moving. Okay. Resume, structuring your resume. Okay. You know, when we talk about SOP and LORs, SOP is talking about motivation, what your interest is. LOR is talking about corroboration, talking about what your skills are from a third-party perspective. Resume is giving the university, the admission committee, a bird's eye view of who you are. So each of these 3 documents serves a different purpose. Okay. Now, you need to create a good resume. The resume has to be 1 page. Okay. Why do we spend time creating a resume at this juncture? Is because when you go there, by the time you reach there in September itself, you're going to have career fairs. All right. And when you have career fairs there in September, early October, okay, you're not going to go around there. You try to settle yourself down. You're going ahead and you have to get into the groove. And all of a sudden, career placement starts happening. Okay. So this is a good way to actually, there's 2 purposes. 1, the colleges might need it. Many colleges do require resumes as part of the application process. 2, you create in structure, you create in such a manner that it works there for getting a full internship or a full-time job as well, if it's a 9-month program. So let's talk about how you actually work on a resume. Okay. This is just talking about the font size, etc. Take a look and read this stuff. Okay. Most important thing when you look at resume is aesthetics. Okay. Second most important thing, and we will discuss it in the coming slides, is it has to be active voice. If you've already done a work, if you've already completed and you've done it in past tense, that means you've completed that job or work or that project or that internship experience, always write in past tense. If you've actually not completed and you're currently doing it, it will be in the present tense, okay? And make sure you actually follow that process. The resume has to be written in a reverse chronological order, okay? It's not first, second, last. The most recent activity has to be on the top, okay? And then we move backwards, all right? Reverse chronologically, okay? Do not use short forms. Avoid starting sentences with I did. As I mentioned to you, always start with an action verb, and we'll talk about action verbs, okay? You know, when we write resumes, we talk about marital status, we talk about our objective, etc. All that needs to be removed, okay? A resume internationally is simple to the point. It's a one-page document that gives you a bird's eye view of what you've achieved, okay? Make sure there is margins, the adequate margins. It should not be so thin, or the point should not be 7 point or 8 points, so it's difficult to read, okay? If you've done work and you spend 3 years or more in work experience, bring the work experience first, your education experience later, okay? If you're just getting out of college, then bring the work experience, the education experience first, okay? And then talk about your projects and work experience, because you don't have much to talk about, okay? Ensure that ultimately, aesthetically, it is easy to look at, okay? And it's not sloppy. I've seen many resumes that have everything, but it's very sloppy. One place they put a period or full stop, another place they leave it blank. One place they hyphenated, the other place they don't, okay? The fonts keep on changing through the entire document, okay? That's not gonna work, okay? Third, if you're gonna apply for a course like business analytics, okay? Talk about the skill set that you've developed for that course that you might need for a full-time job. If you, for example, a Power BI, Tableau, Python, R, always try to bring in your resume in such a manner that it relates to and bring in the qualities or your proficiencies in subjects related to what you want to pursue. Okay, being proficient in piano was not going to work. Okay, but if you think of computer science and you've done things related to, for example, you've done Python, you've done deep learning courses on Coursera, mention those. Okay, so keep in mind that you understand what your end objective is and always work towards getting that's streamlining your resume so it addresses those things, your end objective. Okay, so what to include in your resume? Obviously, your name and contact information, your academic information, your work experience, projects and papers, extracurricular activities. Majority of your work is going to be focused on work experience and projects and papers and technical skills. Okay, so we need to do that. Okay, when you talk about education, okay, you need to talk about the fact that if you've done really well, mention it. Okay, as you can see, we talked about we're using action words. Okay, we're not going to go ahead and just use, okay, Bachelor of Engineering. We always talk about action words of what happened and what transpired. Okay, if you scored average, you don't need to mention your grades. Ignore it. Talk about first class. Okay, so it's how you put the things together. All right. If you have people moving from EXTC to MIS or moving to a different field, talk only about the relevant coursework related to the new field. Okay, you don't need to talk about everything that you've done. Okay, they already have your transcript, but mention what courses are related to what you are planning to pursue. Okay, professional experience. All right, make sure if you're currently working, have the present date. If the company is unknown, write a one-line description of the company. Okay, because they need to understand what you did, because what they need to put is a context of the reason why we say that is because anybody reading the resume, all right, needs to understand what you're describing in context of what the company does. In many cases, if you don't put that one-line description of the company, the context doesn't make any sense. right? So you talk about what you've done there. Again, talk about always start with action words. Okay. Projects and papers, similar thing. But here, give the citation, give the Eisen number if you've written it. Okay. Talk about the project, what the project focus, what you did, technologies used and accolades. This is actually the perfect thing. The 4 things if you mention in your resume, that's all that you need to do. Right? So all that stuff is readily available to you. Courses and certificates. Okay. If you've taken courses, no one is going to ask you for a certificate. No one is going to ask you for certifications. Okay. Never, no one will ask. They'll assume that you know you've done it. The honor code works. Right? So focus on that as well in terms of going through. Right? So talk about the introductory, talk about the courses that you've done, etc. Okay. Skills. If you're going to mention that you have proficiency in certain skills, talk about the skills that you've done. Talk about the technologies that you know. Okay. The different softwares that you know. Okay. If you have, this is by far the most important thing. Right? We're giving you the action verbs that you can actually use to the process to write your resume. Okay. If you're talking about communication, talking about a statement regarding your communication, interpersonal skills, you can talk about it in many different ways. If you're talking about a project that you spearheaded, here you got different words that you can use. The teaching skills. Okay. All this that the verbs that we can give can also be used in your SOP, can also be used in your recommendation letters. So take a look at these, right? More action verbs as we go through, right? Management and leadership skills. There are many ways to actually go ahead and write these things down, okay? What we want to mention is that we always want to start your resume with a action verb, whether it's present or past tense, and then move ahead with the description. Whether it's research skills, your organization skills, everything is listed down here for you guys to take a look at it. Right? So what we're giving you, we're providing you all the so-called verbs that you can use and use them. And that's how you're going to make an effective resume. Okay. Any questions regarding resume? Let's go to questions regarding resume before we talk about choosing the right university. Okay, we got a lot of questions. Okay, Aryan is asking, hold on 1 second. How do we include online course in the resume? You can definitely include online course and mention what you've done, which online course you've done. Okay. And you can put in education or you can put in other information. What's the maximum page a resume should be? The maximum page a resume should be 1 page. Ideally, a resume should always be 1 page. Okay. Don't go. I have had many students who talk about every single project that they've done in the undergraduate tenure. They're not interested in that. Talk only about what is relevant and what is important. All right. And how that relates to your career goals and what you're planning to apply for. Do Udemy courses have any value? Should I add them in my resume? The Udemy courses do have value only if you don't have anything else to talk about. If you do, you don't need to mention everything in your resume. Keep in mind, you got 1 page. Focus on that page and see what is important and what is not important. We talked about how many pages. I published a paper in a journal, but the journal has not put information about the papers that were published in the journal. Should I include it in my application? You can definitely include it in the application. Ideally, try the Eisen number. If you don't have it, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. Should we mention that MS Suite specifically since it's a common thing now? If there's anything common, don't mention it. Okay. MS Office Suite. Okay. If certifications aren't being asked, then wouldn't there be a chance of bluffing? Yes, there is a chance of bluffing. But quite honestly, when you go for your interviews there are going to be technical rounds. And at that point in time, if you're bluffing, you're not going to get through. Okay. What about choosing the right course? If there's a confusion between MSCS and MIS, okay. Generally speaking, if there's a difference, speak to one of our counselors and they'll be more than happy to help you through this process. Can we put in technical training done at office if it's not exactly related to the course? Not necessary. You don't need to put that in because just thinking about it, you have 1 page. Use the page to your advantage. Don't let it just go all over the place. Okay. Will it be too bold to mention that I'm a co-founder of a startup? Not at all. If you've actually done it, please go ahead and do it. They'll appreciate that. But the question is, what have you done with the start co-founder? They'll ask you, what have you done? And if there's an interview, they'll definitely use a resume and base your interview off the resume. So don't bluff to the point that you don't know, you can't substantiate it. When is it okay to exceed the 1-page limit? So Lekha, generally speaking, don't try to exceed it. But if you do, then take it to 1.5 pages. All right. I like to see resumes or page because quite honestly, the reason I'm telling you that is when you actually apply for a job there, they're going to make you condense it anyway to a page. So you might as well do it here. The resumes that I see that are more than a page are for people who work for 10 years out there. Okay. Okay. Niti is asking, should I include SSC and HSC marks? No, just focus on your undergraduate marks. Why do you need to mention SSC and HSC? No one cares. Okay. What if the projects I have done are not related to the field I want to pursue? We discussed that. You don't need to mention that. How can we add internships in resume? Just have a separate category of internships, work experience. Internship is a work experience, so have that as a category. Or professional experience is the right word to use. Okay, and how much detail should we mention about current work experience? As in leadership awards, how much detail should we mention about the current work experience? Okay, if you don't, then don't. If you've actually been working for the last 3 years, then spend a good portion of your resume on that. If it's just a mention, that you spend 1 month, don't highlight it to the point of that it covers half a page of your resume. Okay, it doesn't make sense because they're going to look at the tenure as well when they look at your resume. So if you're going to expound on something that you spent only for 1 month and write 5 different items or make that half a page of your resume, that description doesn't make any sense. Okay, but if you spend 3 years there, then you can actually use the so-called you can use a quarter page or a third of the page of the resume 1-pager describing your experience. Do they verify the certificates? Generally not. Okay, we're going to move on. I think we're exceeding the limits anyway. It's 5:30. Okay. If I'm working then in work experience under the organization description, should we write about the things that we are currently working on first? Yes. Okay. Start with first and move. Always go reverse chronological. Can EDX courses be mentioned in mentioning? Yes. It doesn't matter at all. You can mention it if it's related to what you're planning to do. My publication has just my first name over it and not my last name. Can I still mention it? Yes, you can. If you've actually done it, you can definitely mention it. But that's strange that the publication only has your first name and not your last name. Okay. Employees of an organization are not allowed to send mails to anybody outside the organization domain name. How will my upload LOR be updated? Great. Aryan, that's a great question. Then what you do is you use his personal ID. Okay. But make sure that the LOR is on the letterhead of the company. Is it okay to include online training in resume? It is okay, but just keep in mind, if you have something better to write that instead. Okay. What if Kiran is asking, very good. What if my work experience and master's course don't match? Kiran, if you have something else to talk about, yes. But if you, for example, graduated in 2019 and you're applying in 2021, you need to substantiate and you need to explain what you did in that 2 years. So you definitely need to mention the work experience for those 2 years, but don't spend too much time on it. Okay, guys, we're going to move on because it's never going to end. Okay. As we go through this. All right. Let's continue. All right. I am going to go ahead. How to choose the right university. Okay. Essentially, okay, what are we looking for in the right university? I look at only 3 things. Okay. First thing I look at is the return on investment. What do I mean by the return on investment? Is if I'm going to put in X amount of money, what am I going to get out of it? That's the first thing. The second thing, and in return on investment, I'm also looking at, okay, so what am I looking, what are the variables in return on investment? Like I mentioned earlier, is how much money I'm going to earn versus how much I'm going to invest in it. Okay, the higher the ratio, the better the chances, the better the university from a return on investment perspective. And that's what I would pick. Okay, but to get the return on investment, the various variables that come into play. Okay, first variable that comes into play comes into the perspective of all right, what are the career placement statistics from that university? What percent of students actually get jobs? Okay, what percent of students actually get internships? How are you going to find that information out? And I'm going to tell you how to do that. Okay. The second thing that you're going to look at, all right, is what is the location of that school? Okay. Location is absolutely important. For example, if you're doing finance, okay, would you actually think of studying in Hyderabad in terms of getting jobs, or would you do it in Mumbai? You're more likely to do it in Mumbai because that's a financial capital. All right. So likewise, even in the US, location matters significantly. If you're looking at comp science, there are 4 pockets that you can look at. You can look at Silicon Valley, you can look at Los Angeles, you can look at Texas, you can look at Boston, you can look at Washington. There are only certain pockets that you can look at. Okay. Likewise, if you're doing automobile engineering, mechanical, industrial, everything has pockets. Okay. Third thing I want to look at is also, what is it going to cost me to go there? Okay. What are the chances of TA, RA for that school? Okay. Are there enough ample opportunities for TA and RA? Okay, in the second semester onwards, which will effectively bring down my cost of education. Okay, how am I going to find this information to you? We made it easy for you. Okay, how are we going to do that? You have the app, Converge app. Okay, allows you to start looking at watching student experiences. What we've done is we've profiled students from across all universities, where we've asked them specific questions relating to what are the career opportunities at that program or that university. What are the possibilities of getting internships or a TA and RA? Okay, we profiled all that information and we've shared it with you on the app. So definitely download that, all right, and start watching it. You can use a search and you can go through it. Okay. You look at course flexibility. Now, why is course flexibility also important? Is because ultimately, you want to see if you're looking at a branch change. Okay, for example, there are students who are coming from EXTC and want to ultimately move with CS. Okay, and they are thinking how to do it. So one approach to do is you might think of doing it through a data science track, or you might think of doing an MIS track. Okay, or you might think of doing it through a bridge program, or you might do it through an EXTC electrical and computer engineering program. If you're looking at electrical and computer engineering, you want to see how many courses can you take it as a computer science, how many computer science courses you can take as part of the ECE program. Okay, in some schools, they both are part of the same department. In other schools, there are limitations. Okay, you need to start thinking through all that information. Easiest ways to do it, if you don't have the resources available to do that, just contact one of our counselors here. They'll help you through the process. Okay, because we do it day in and day out, and we have enough of a year on the ground level to understand what is happening. Right. So definitely get all the information. Why is it important? Because ultimately you don't want to go to the wrong school. Okay, you want to make sure that you're going to be spending money at this point in time. You want to make sure that you actually go to this right school, the school that creates the right platform for you and your future growth. Okay, the expenses vary by university, by location. Okay, so this gives you a clear slide of how the costs vary by country. Okay, keep in mind this is a total all-in cost, but guess what? At least in the US and to an extent in Switzerland, okay, and other countries, if you get a TA and RA, those costs will drop significantly. My experience has been that close to 25 to 30% of the students that go through us get a TA or RA, some kind of internship opportunity, some kind of assistantship opportunity in the second semester onwards. So effectively, the cost that you're looking at, 30 to 50 lakhs, actually comes down. Okay. In the case of Canada, likewise, right? All countries, like it happens, right? Let me first answer questions and we'll go through how Collegepond helps. All right. Let me just complete this and then we'll go through the process. Then we'll answer a few questions. Okay. How does Collegepond help in this process? We start with the entire career. We want to understand what your ultimate objective is. Once we have your ultimate objective in mind, then we actually lay the path to achieving that objective. Okay. We'll start with profile building. We'll do the university selection. Okay. University selection is focused on the ROI. Focus on where assistantship opportunities are available. Focus on where the jobs are available. Okay. Then we move to the documentation stage of the SOP LORs. We don't use templates. Okay. We have a very elaborate process on getting those 3 documents together. All right. And then we move to the entire steps. Scholarship, we talk about scholarships. Scholarships, we start talking about once we actually submit the application, then the focus is all about how to cut your cost down of attendance. So we talk through the entire process, scholarships, your financial assistance, etc. Okay. Most importantly, we don't just leave you once you get there. Okay. We are there with you all the way through till you end up getting a job. So if you have a question, you have a problem, you've got something to find a job, you need to network. We have over 12,000 students, actually more than 13,000 students that actually placed internationally. So we can connect you to anybody in any company that you would like to connect with. Okay. As I mentioned to you, we launched Converge just about a week, 10 days ago. Download the app. You'll see all the information that I'm talking about. All right. It's available in the Google Play Store and the iOS Store. Okay. Everything, all the resources that we've done is resources that we've created over the years. Okay. It's all experiences of students. It's not something that we've actually spent time building it out for you, because we've seen a lot of questions that we had to field over the last many years that we worked in this business. Okay. And we've tried to address those questions in a very succinct manner through the app. Okay. Our upcoming events is we have a ETS and TOEFL webinar with ETS on the 7th, followed by an SOP LOR workshop and a resume workshop going forward. All right. You need to register for the event, just download the app and you'll take it from there. Okay. We just talked about financing your education briefly. Let's talk about a little bit further. Okay. There were 4 or 5 ways to finance your education. Keep in mind, many students think that, oh my gosh, how will I pay for my education? Okay. But let me tell you something, that how many hours are you going to spend in class? You're not going to spend more than 12 to 14 hours in a week in class. The remaining time is where you can actually leverage your skill, leverage your time to either get an RATA opportunity or an on-campus job, or start scouting for internships. All right. So what we help our students with is, first we try to work through them through the financing of the education, which is through education loans, where we've tied up with all the major players out there. Okay, and because we deal with significant volumes, we're able to negotiate the rates the most the most economical basis across the board. All right. And then we go ahead and start working with the student, explaining to the students how to actually capture the assistantship opportunities. Okay, what you need to do for an RA and TA, and how do you actually secure those? All right. We will also talk about what scholarships are available for you guys and how do you approach the internships. And some of this information is already available on the app, so you definitely can go ahead and read upon that or watch student experiences on the same. Okay. If you need to get in touch with us, here are the contact information points that we have. You can email us or you can fill out the form that's already out there. Farhan, you sent the form?
Yes, sir, I did.
All right. So it's talking about some comments regarding the app, etc. Okay, about what the app is, etc. So you can download it on the app and Play Store. All right. So let's talk about some questions. Okay. I am going to go to the end. Okay. I'm going to spend the next 10 minutes answering your questions. Okay. I apologize if I don't answer all your questions. All right. But you can definitely schedule a one-to-one counseling session with the counselor at Collegepond, and they'll be more than happy to answer your questions. Okay. I want to pursue general computer science. Most universities offer the same course in that. How do I choose university based on curriculum? As I mentioned to you, the first thing you need to talk about, because they all offer the same thing, you should not talk about curriculum. You should talk about the whole idea of return on investment that we discussed earlier. All right. Next, Siley says, do we need to explain the 1 year gap after graduation, Siley? You should definitely explain that 1 year gap because they want to see what you did. You want to see whether you're productive or you just wasted time. Okay, let me just answer this. Can you talk about a little bit about the GRE waiver? Okay, the GRE waiver, a lot of schools and universities are offering a GRE waiver. So that means you don't need to take the GRE. You can still apply for the program this year. I don't think that's going to continue for another year. So if you haven't taken the GRE or your score, you believe that your GRE score is going to be relatively weak, this is your last opportunity, in my opinion, to actually apply this year and get into the school of your choice, right? What will matter then is your SOP, LOR, and your entire application, right? So there are schools offering GRE waiver. That means they will not look at you. They will not penalize you if you haven't taken the GRE. Where can I see university and courses offered by them in the app? Okay. The best thing to go to the University Finder and you'll get the courses and universities. You also get feedback of what students have discussed with us in the past in the University Finder module on the app. How long does it take to prepare for GRE GMAT? If I start now, will it be possible to apply for Fall 22? Definitely it is possible. Okay. Keep in mind, majority of the deadlines are in the month of November, end November, December 15, Jan 1st. The priority deadlines are October 15, November 1st. I'm planning to do an MS after 8 years of work. Any special points that I need to take care of in the SOP? I would suggest you schedule a one-to-one counseling session with one of our counselors. They'll definitely tell you what to take care of. Okay. I want to pursue aerospace engineering, but all of my experience are related to EV and HHP. I'm worried that this will balance. How do I play this in my application? Guess what? EV and HH fields are related to aerospace engineering. The question is, you need to figure out how to play that in your SOP and make the story viable. It is possible to do that. I'm looking to switch careers and wanting to pursue a master's in a different field for my work. Can I support make it stand out? 100% will be. Each student that we work with is unique and they have a unique profile. So we have to work, understand your profile, and then work towards creating a storyline with you. Okay. If I want to do a master's at Will Collegepond, be able to definitely. We've had students who've done economics, who's gone into Yale, Tufts, you name it, we've got into schools there. Okay. How do we choose between thesis-based and non-thesis-based course? Could we change from thesis to non-thesis? Generally speaking, Pavitra, you'll actually start in a non-thesis course and you need to substantiate your interest for a thesis-based course. Okay, that's how it normally works. Okay, if I apply by end of April, will it be too late for good universities? Highly, definitely not. Okay, just pay attention to deadlines. All right. Does Collegepond have specialized people to just talk about computer science? Yes, we do. Okay. I think the way we work is we have specialized counselors for each of our modules. Okay. And therefore, from a career perspective, we have people for for university selection, we have people. We don't believe in jack of all trades. We believe that each individual in our company has to be a specialized individual focused on one area of the application process. What is the difference in GRE waived and GRE optional? Will a person with the GRE have an advantage of those? No. GRE waiver and GRE optional is very similar. Okay. If you have a good, they will look at your GRE if you submit it. If you don't have your GRE, they won't look at it. That's GRE optional. GRE waivers, they're not going to look at the GRE at all. Okay. But in many cases, they will always make it GRE, and they use the word GRE waiver, but it's actually akin to GRE optional. Will it affect your scholarship purpose? Not necessarily. They're going to look at your entire profile. Okay. In the case of a university that doesn't have waived of GRE, will GRE score help in receiving scholarships? Atharva, if they say that we need the GRE score for scholarships, they will look at then you need the scores. But in many cases, they will look at your entire profile and decide on the scholarships. They're not going to penalize you. All right. Where can we see university and courses? We already did that. Universities and courses are in the University Finder. I want to pursue data science. I've chosen electives in states and which I've performed well, but overall GPA is above average. You can definitely do it. We've had many students with similar profiles. Can we go for a change of field in the UK from banking to HR? Definitely. You just need a good story. Okay. I am applying for non-thesis courses. Will it be still helpful to reach out to professors before applying? Or if so, how can I reach out to them? Quite honestly, if you're going to be looking at non-thesis courses, professors are not going to be in touch with you. Okay. You can definitely reach out to them, but generally, if you're a PhD applicant, you have to reach out to the professor before applying. Right? So that's something you have to do. Okay, I have a GRE score of 290 and a TOEFL of 95. I want to apply for MI score. Can I get a DC score? You can, because this is a year that many schools have a GRE waiver, so you can definitely look at it, CR7. Okay, how long will I have until the loan return starts? Okay, the loan return, you have a moratorium period of 1 year, 6 months to a year after you graduate for the loan, the EMI to start. Before that will be a partial interest. Speak to the loan counselor at Collegepond. They'll help you through the entire process. Guys, I'm not going to be able to answer all the questions. I'm seeing the 99 plus questions here on my screen. Okay. I would definitely recommend, if you have any questions or anything, either send an email to info@collegepond.com or fill out the link that's available on the chat. Okay. If you're using YouTube, can you also, Farhan, can you send the link on YouTube as well, if you don't mind? Okay. I don't know where he is. Okay. Can we have this? Will we be at a disadvantage if we don't submit GRE marks? We already mentioned that GRE is highly recommended. Ideally, if it says GRE is highly recommended, you should take the GRE. You will be at a disadvantage there. Okay. What is the scope of forensic psychology? It depends on what you want to do ultimately. Okay. And that's something that we'll need to have a one-on-one discussion on. Okay, in SOP, can we write a GR score if we have scored well? Niti, quite honestly, okay, the schools that you'll be applying to, a lot of, if you're going to apply to a really good school, everyone will have similar scores. So there's no reason to blow your trumpet of your GRE score, for a GRE score. Guys, if your GRE score, if your GRE exam is scheduled for a later date, okay, should you be starting with your SOP parallelly with the preparations? The answer is 100% yes. You definitely need to start your SOP and LOR as of yesterday. Okay, so definitely spend time on that. All right, guys, I want to answer another 2-3 more questions, and then we call it a day. Can we do a master's from one university and go to another university for PhD with masters? Definitely yes. Okay. If you don't have a good GRE score, you don't need to send it. Okay, if there's a GRE waiver, definitely do that. I find myself to be a jack of all trades. How do I go about providing strong points in my resume essay? Anonymous attendee, okay, that's the art, okay, of writing and putting your positioning yourself, because we essentially create a marketing document for yourself, and that's what you need to think about. So what I would do is I would sit down and just introspect and talk about what is my marketing, what do I want to highlight. First focus on that, and then build your essays in your resume. So if I'm going to apply for a master's in USC, will GRE be compulsory? Vishal, at this point in time, I believe GRE will be there, but I can't commit to this at this point in time because I don't know what the future holds. Okay. Is early mid-November considered as early bird application? I don't know. Is early mid-November considered an early bird as early bird application? Not necessarily true if that's a final deadline, but generally early mid-November is considered early bird application for many schools. Okay, two more questions. Okay, how do I justify gap after undergrad? You need to show some kind of relevant experience after undergrad. You can't say that you've done nothing and that we need to brainstorm together and work that out for you. Okay, Sachi is asking for university selection. Should we see the scope of the field in that area or the cost of education, then apply in the area that has scope for the course? Sachi, for you, should we see the scope of the field in that area or the cost of education? Sachi, you need to look at both, okay, and then apply for it. I think the key thing is cost is definitely related to what your return is going to be. So they both go hand in hand, and that's a formula of return on investment. Do good marks in TOEFL help me get good universities? Anonymous attendee, not really. Good marks in TOEFL will only ensure that you don't have to take an English class over there. US is definitely Siley. Their students with full vaccination are definitely going there. It's not US is not allowing even fully vaccinated. That's not true at all. Okay, guys, last question. If I want to go in fall 23, is it okay to give the GI and TOEFL in December 2021 only? Yes, it is. Okay. I would take the GRE now because the score is valid for 5 years. TOEFL, I would wait till next semester. Okay, guys, if you have any questions, feel free to get in touch with us. Okay. Again, info@collegepond.com is there. If you want to schedule a one-to-one meeting, that's what I would suggest. If you have any more questions, you can definitely do it, and then we can take it from there. Thank you very much for this, for being part of the session and being that interactive through the session. I hope this was informative and definitely help you out through the process. And good luck on your applications and your future endeavors. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.